Hello, and welcome to kind of part two of how the gospel liberates us from self love. So on Wednesday, I did part one, and we talked about how the gospel liberates us from self love by assuring us that somebody else loves us. In fact, God loves us with an infinite love, with the greatest, no one loves like this. Greater love has no man than that he lay down his life for his friends. And that's how Jesus has loved us. So that's what we talked about on Wednesday. The more we understand the gospel and how Christ laid down his life for us, and how he promises to give us everything we need for life and godliness and eternity, that'll free us up from feeling like we have to watch out for ourselves, that we have to put ourselves number one, that we have to exalt ourselves because we're afraid nobody else is going to really care about us. And so the gospel frees us in that way. But today we're going to talk about how the gospel liberates us from self love also by giving us a vision of something, namely someone that's infinitely more worthy of our love and affection and life than just living narrowly for ourselves. Okay, so listen to the second part of reason number 17 in the Gospel Primer. Second, the gospel reveals to me the breathtaking glory and loveliness of God. All right, so remember in 2 Corinthians 4, the gospel is called the gospel of the glory of Christ. That's the gospel of the beauty, the manifold excellence and majesty of God, the gospel of the glory of Christ. In 1 Timothy chapter 1, verse 11, it's called the gospel of the glory of the blessed God. So the gospel in it, as we look at who Jesus is and what he's done for us in his life, his miracles, his death, his resurrection, his exaltation to the right hand of the Father, when we look at all that, we see glory. John in John 1:14 says, we beheld his glory as of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth. So we see the breathtaking glory and loveliness of God, and in so doing, it lures my heart away from love of self and leaves me enthralled by him instead. The more I behold God's glory in the gospel, the more lovely he appears to me. And the more lovely he appears, the more self fades into the background like a former love interest who can no longer compete for my affections. So it just means like we've seen something greater, right? Preaching the gospel to myself every day reminds me of God's astounding love for me and also of his infinite worthiness to be loved by me above everything else. That's what Jesus says. The first and greatest commandment is to love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your strength, all your soul, and all your mind. These reminders deliver a 1-2 punch to my innate self-absorption, my innate inwardness, invertedness. So it gives this 1-2 punch to my innate self-absorption and leaves me increasingly absorbed with Christ and with God's ultimate plan to gather together all heavenly and earthly things in him. So we are all glory seekers, meaning we are made by God with hearts that long to see greatness, that long to see beauty and excellence and to worship, right? We love it. We love to see glory. We spend lots of money to see an amazing musician or to go to a beautiful place and stand in awe of the beauty there. People climb mountains, work really hard to experience awe. We pay, money to go see the greatest athletes in the world. And a lot of times we glorify ourselves. But those who kind of live for self-glory, when we do that, it never satisfies. And you see this in people who kind of reach the pinnacle of their profession are often not happy, right? And that's because having everybody tell you you're the greatest or reaching some level in your profession or in the movies or in sports or in music, you find that you get to the top of the ladder and there's nothing there. And it's empty because however glorious we are or we can become, that's not enough to satisfy. So we have an appetite for glory, but what our taste buds are broken. As C.S. Lewis put it one time, he says, we are far too easily satisfied. Because all of the glory that we see in this world is a reflection, and really it's a at times a pale reflection, a lot of times, of the glory of the God who made this world. We are made not just to see glory in God's creation, not just to live for ourselves in the image of God in ourselves. No, we're made to see the glory of God himself and to enjoy him forever. And so God loves us. I think I closed on Wednesday like this too. God loves us not by making much of us in terms of exalting us as the greatest thing in the universe, but by freeing us from our obsession with self so that we can know him and make much of him forever. All right. Have a good weekend.